Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Podcast Pasta. That's a podcast that's like pasta, not the podcast that's about pasta. As always, I'm your host, Mike, and we're joined once again with a longtime friend of the channel. You're the only returning guest on the show. Dennis, you are a content creator. You've been kind of on a hiatus, on a bit of a break recently. You're known for manga reviews. Way back in your past, you did Archie impressions. You also from time to time stream. Dennis, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Michael. I'm doing pretty good. Yes, that is correct. I'm on a slight bit of a hiatus, but I'm actually right about to end that hiatus tomorrow.
Oh, well, I can't wait to talk about that more a little bit more in this episode. But man, it's been, yeah, I mean, for out of context again, or those of you who might be newer to the show, me and, Dennis and I are longtime friends. I've known him even before I started Podcast Pasta, so, we're not only like kind of work, I don't count this as work, but, we're not only like creative collaborators, but we also know each other in real life to some degree. And it's actually been a while since we've talked like in general. So man, how have you been doing?
I've been doing pretty good, Michael. I actually I'm gonna graduate this semester, and I'll finally be joining the normal workforce outside of just making stupid manga reviews.
Hey, I don't think they're stupid, but no. So I guess without like I don't want you to divulge too much personal details, but I guess like yeah, what did you graduate in? What did you study?
Well, I was originally studying international business, because it's a big belief of mine, and obviously many people are seeing it this way too, that a lot of business, globalization is just marching forward. So it's good to know how to interact with businesses across cultural divides. But I also am sort of pivoting towards the marketing aspect because while taking my classes and while doing my studying, I found that the marketing is what I've been engaging with. So I'm seeing about I'm graduating with I switched from the international business to the marketing degree just because it was a bit more relevant to me, and I feel like marketing is always going to be a big thing with businesses, even internationally. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, what's the whole saying that like no matter what you get into, you're always kind of getting into marketing because you're always trying to sell yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly, and especially that actually. I've been taking a lot of, like courses online that have been like provided free by the university, and like 90% of these people say the same thing: is like you can apply a lot of what you learn in content creation and growing a channel into selling yourself, because you're always trying to sell yourself, as you said, to a potential job, to a potential client. It's always about making yourself look attractive to somebody else. So it's essentially it's a general idea that is always going to be present.
So again, we haven't really talked much in this past year, admittedly. So this is actually the first time hearing that you're actually coming away from your break. If you don't mind kind of indulging me and my audience, as well as potentially your audience if they come to listen to this episode, what are you coming back with?
So it's actually interesting because, as you know, my channel has gone through a few transformations. As you said, first I started with these impressions, then there was focus on Archie content, and then there was a lot of manga content, just because I saw the manga content was doing pretty well, at least relatively. But the problem with that is my channel name is Dennis the Menace, right? Obviously a reference to beloved comic strip character from both England and the US, Dennis the Menace. Now, the thing is, my content isn't very menacing. It's pretty standard, actually. So this causes, there's quite a few times where I'll take a break from burnout from doing one thing because naturally I'm a very what's the word I'm looking for? Floaty person. I go from one thing to the next, and then I can always go back, but my interests are always jumping. So with that in mind, I've was on this little break just because I had done about 2 or 3 manga videos in a row where I just read and reported. And then I started getting back into my reading phase, just classic books. And I'm like, why don't I just review whatever the fuck I'm doing at the moment?
So we lost the sponsorship with that one. It's fine. Go ahead.
Oh,
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm kidding.
No, you're not. But I did withdraw my sponsorship. But
damn.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No. Yeah. So like you were saying, you're pivoting to reviewing just basically whatever like kind of comes to your mind.
Yeah, so not even just reviewing, too. I've got a few, as they say, video essays planned that I've got like this. My process is I've got like a little list. I have a separate Discord where I sort out all my planned future projects. And I've actually been collaborating with a few local people. One of them, our mutual buddy Josh, he's a musician. And so I'm working with him on something that's not necessarily manga, book, or review related. It's part of a little project I've been having in the back of my mind, but he's going to help me bring that to reality. And then I have other people who are interested in possibly collaborating via art or potentially co-hosting a show. And there's also a very special project I'm working on that I don't have anything gaming related, and that's sort of going to show up in my new wave of content, which will be whatever interests me, I'll make a video on it. But this is a very specific project, which I don't want to reveal too much about. It's also in the works, but it's going to be a good time. So I've got a lot of, as they say, irons in the fire.
Yeah, that's always interesting because I find that, there can be one, like you said, there is kind of this advantage of like going a bit broader with, I talked about this like way back in the day, but going a bit broader with like your content because, you don't feel like you're necessarily like cornering yourself into like a specific niche. But the problem is that, that I think I sometimes find is that if you do something like that, you risk kind of like not building a central audience. Like you essentially, if you go that route, you have to basically build the audience around like you specifically as a personality, as opposed to like what you're covering. And I find that could sometimes be a bit difficult, especially like how you present and market your content. So how would you, I guess, solidify your audience if you're going that broad with your strategy? I feel like such a, now I'm the marketing guy here. Sorry, go ahead.
That's lingo 101. But so I know exactly what you're talking about. That has been a fear of mine, and that's actually why, despite the burnout, I've been trying to stick to things like manga or Archie comic reviews. But while there is always a danger, it's unfortunately it's also true, I find, that if you're not 100% focused on that type of content, then you're going to sort of get the same result of not really being able to build an audience because you don't know where you're going with it. And while that is true, if I try and focus on all these different things, it'll mean that my audience will have, like you said, they'll have to sort of grow around me. They have to say, oh, I want to see Dennis doing this, as opposed to I want to see this, and this guy just happens to be talking about it. Is that unfortunately I just don't have that sort of focus present in my regular life to build a channel the proper way, as it were. So personally, I feel that as long as I'm making it fun and everyone's having a good time, it'll be slower, definitely, but I feel like I can build that audience around me.
Well, I look forward to what you bring to the upcoming year. Speaking, since we always do this episode in January, and a lot of other like content creators like to kind of do a type of year in review for themselves, whether it's like talking about like the top 10 favorite games that they played in the year, or like top 10 favorite songs of the year. So I guess I'm kind of curious to get your 2025 in review, especially since we are a media channel, since I do focus on like visual media. Any shows that you really enjoyed that you want to just shout out here? Just basically give your 2025 in review. How was it for you?
Honestly, not too bad. I've been trying to. One of my other issues I feel is I don't experience this kind of culture enough as it comes, like popular culture. So I've been trying to watch more shows, read, you know what I mean. And in particular, I really enjoyed. I saw the show, the Chair Company by
I've heard
Tim
good
Robinson.
things about that.
Yeah, and in particular, that one stood out to me. What the one thing I'll note about it is, if you like Tim Robinson, if you like the show, I think you should leave. That's exactly what this is. It's one long I think you should leave sketch, and that's perfect for me. But I know there are some people who sort of wanted something new from Tim Robinson, which I don't think that's the kind of guy you're going to get something new from. And the Chair Company is just more of the same. But I did like it. They had some really really weird moments that fit with that type of humor that I like. Besides that, there is, of course, that show Pluribus.
I love Pluribus.
Yeah, Pluribus. I've been watching that one. I have to finish it. I think I'm on episode 6, and I am enjoying it. My only real, I guess I'm still not entirely sure what's going on. Like 6 episodes in, it's just kind of like it's nice and it's slow, but like I feel like, yeah, okay, I haven't really learned much, and I'm fine with that. But that's my first impression of it until I finish it. I'm really excited about how that ends. The Fallout show is probably my biggest. That's still airing. I think it's on episode 3 or 4 right now.
Yeah, I think episode 4.
Yeah. And I'm really enjoying it, although there are certain scenes where, I'm a big fan of the games, and I absolutely love, especially New Vegas, where there's a big chunk of the story is taking place in right now. And I like, they've clearly, one of my big problems with video game adaptations is I'm always a big fan of the idea of sticking to a story. Even if it's a story I don't personally like and it's choices I didn't personally make, I prefer the world to actually show some results. So Fallout New Vegas, of course, is a choice-based game. You have multiple endings, and there's quite a few you could choose from. Some would you'd consider like the classic good guy choices. Others are like really weird ones. And for me, I don't have a particular preference for any of them. It's just important to me that the world is shown to have advanced and that there's evidence that a choice was chosen. And I think the new season does a pretty decent job of showing that clearly they're not just going to like push everything into, that stuff happened so long ago, it doesn't matter. They're showing the results of certain choices that could be made. And I'm really enjoying that. So we'll see how that plays out. And besides that, good year for gaming. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was a big one for me. That's a fantastic game, by the way. Just like the amount of role playing. I love RPGs, as I'm probably putting across. And then I've read a few good books too. Although those aren't really 2025 books. Those are classics. Like I just read. This is actually going to be the point of my new video. It's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, which is a classic murder mystery novel. So yeah, I think 2025 has been a pretty good year for me in terms of enjoying the content. Most of what I've interacted with, I've enjoyed.
So many different angles I can approach this. I guess I'll start with your upcoming work. You're going to be talking about this book by Agatha Christie. I think her work is, like, for context, I usually engage with her work through the adaptations of it, like through like Murder on the Nile, Death on the Nile, Murder on the Oriental Express, all that, and especially like the newer movies that I can't remember when exactly they came out. But I've been trying to kind of work on this thing. Like, I think Agatha Christie is so interesting in terms of like adaptations because with like I'm trying to remember who wrote Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Doyle or
Yeah, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Arthur Conan Doyle, right? He,
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes, like, people point to his work and like Sherlock Holmes is like a very kind of iconic character to the point where he's very much kind of like the main focal point of the stories and the mysteries are kind of secondary, right? So with
Yeah.
adaptations of like with adaptations and parodies of like Sherlock Holmes stories, the focus is like, oh, how do you adapt like Sherlock Holmes as a character? And the mystery is just like whatever, right? But with Agatha
Yeah.
Christie, I find that it's like the premise of the mystery is more so the focus of like the parodies and the parodies and the adaptations and like the
Yeah.
main detective character who sometimes they actively bring in like Perro is the detective in those stories, but sometimes they could just be whoever. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why you see like with a lot of her work, she's very famous for Death on the Nile, like the general premise of a murder on like a ferry or like on a boat, you know, uh, Murder on the Oriental Express, like, the premise of being like a murder set up in like a train, setting and you have to solve it as the train is running or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of curious, like your thoughts on that, on the fact that like, with Agatha Christie, most of her work is more so known for like the premise of it rather than like the detective character that she made for those stories.
Yeah, no, I know what you're so yeah, she's very famous for her locked room murder mysteries, and that's sort of why I read I've gone through two of her books, and I'll talk. And Then There Were None is probably one of this one that it's famous because it doesn't even really have a detective character. It's all about the mystery. And then The Murder of Roger Ackroyd it's actually a Hercule Poirot. He's the detective in it, but he does take a minor role. It's not shown from his perspective. It's shown from the perspective of a new character. So yeah, a lot of her works have really well written mysteries. That's actually kind of why one of the reasons I've never interacted as much with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's works, like the classic Sherlock Holmes stories, is because, like you said, they've been adapted so much, and because the focus is always more on the quality of the character rather than the quality of the mystery. Not to say the mysteries are bad, but they're certainly just not as memorable as Mr. Holmes himself. Uh, they've never really stood out to me. But the Agatha Christie works are so well written because the characters are almost like the characters and the setting are all just part of the mystery. They serve to make the mystery stand out. And so the characters aren't that memorable, but the mysteries are way better to read. They're more exciting. And this is, of course, I've seen the movie Murder on the Orient, and it was so long ago. This is before I was like actually engaging with an Agatha Christie work, but I remember very much liking the actual mystery. And the two books I've read, I'll talk about The Murder of Roger Ackroyd heavily in my video, but like, and Then There Were None, I'm not really going to mention, so I'll go over. But the way the clues are weaved into the story, it's very beautiful. Like, obviously, she's one of the greats, and there's a reason for that. And so, yeah, I enjoy the way her mysteries are set up.
Yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned this because recently I actually did finish watching Wake Up Dead Man, the latest Knives Out movie, and
Yes.
one thing that I really love Benoit Blanc as a detective as a character, and I feel like he strikes that really good balance between like he is very like he is very much his own character, but he's never like the focus of the story. Most of the time, the focus of the story, if you were to like, break the Knives Out movies into like their own kind of formula, is on the accused character, right? And that's especially true in like Wake Up Dead Man, where for like half of the film we're following the accused character, which I don't want to give away too much of the plot because that's part of the fun of the Knives Out movie. But it is this upcoming like priest that was like moved into like this new church, and it's a really engaging story. But like he's the main focus of like the arc and the journey of this mystery, and Blanc just comes in like I think like midway into the movie, and that's like and then like he starts getting involved in the plot. So I think there is a way that you could kind of like strike this balance of like having an interesting detective character while not making them like the main focal point, and or like taking away from like the intrigue of the mystery.
Yeah. I mean, what you've described, because that's the classic. Basically, they'll introduce a sidekick, and of course, I saw the Wake Up Dead Man, and I loved it. And all three of these movies have a sidekick character who is actually directly related to the plot in some way, whose perspective is more important. And then the detective character, Benoit Blanc, in this case, sort of acts as like a gear or a wrench in the spanner, or a spanner in the works, whatever the word. You know what I mean? It's basically they're interrupting these laid out murders just because they're an unexpected variable. And I think that is the best way to do these, because you don't want to focus too much on the detective, because while they're interesting, they're going to be in the next book or in the next movie, so they can slowly get their important views. But these other characters are just here for this one story, presumably. So it's the best way to maximize their relevancy and really get you connected to them. So yeah, I think the Benoit Blanc movies are also pretty great.
So I kind of want to go back to I'm also following like the Fallout series, and it's always I think a fun topic that we bring up every time we come on, because like last year I think the first season was premiering, and I got some of your thoughts on that. And with the second season, I'm kind of curious because I know some people were, and it was like mostly mild complaints, but some people were complaining that like it did feel like the series was kind of trying to take into account the events of the game, but obviously, like you said, that's a very limited approach because they're like, very choice based, and like your ending can vary wildly depending on like what you do in a playthrough. And like some people are having a hard time with the series understanding like, okay, what path did the events take? Like what are they making canon in context to like the games? And I think, at least for myself, because I can't remember too much about like New Vegas, but I'm having a harder time like following like what they're wanting to keep like canon, or like basically what decisions are they wanting to make like canon in the context of like the story they're trying to tell. The example I think is kind of like I mean, a lot of people point to like the developments with the New California Republic, but also like to some degree, I don't know if you caught up this far with the show, but like what they done with the Legion, where it still kind of exists, but now it has this new dynamic. Yeah, and again, we're still very early in the season, so I don't know how they're going to continue developing the Legion. But I guess for somebody that has more familiarity with New Vegas, can you kind of piece together what you think they are keeping canon from the games, and what they are kind of like, or if they are deviating anything away from it in order to like tell a more cohesive story?
Okay, yeah. So one of the things I did notice, because I'm debating making a video on this, like the first 4 episodes when they come out. I'm gonna review them, and I'm gonna look at that question pretty extensively and say like, what are they doing? And a few of the things I've noticed is, like, it was actually the Caesar's Legion scene in particular that I was obviously I don't want to spoil it for your viewers, but there's a particular comment they make regarding the Legion leader. They specify the original Legion leader who you meet in New Vegas, and it sort of eliminates some possible endings, which is why I'm kind of excited, because it's like it means that some things may not be entirely concrete, but it just leaves out certain possibilities as the endings. But besides that, I've noticed a few various things. Like we meet the Great Khans early on, and this is a faction you can meet in the games, and you can influence how they like their future in the Mojave. And I believe the series takes place around 30 years past the original games. So there's always going to be a little bit of like so much time has passed, even if there is a concrete thing that happened and they reference, like we're probably not going to see the results of it. But yeah, like we see the Great Khans, and we see how they interact in one of the iconic towns, Novak. And basically, as a Fallout fan, I'm actually, this is one of the parts I wasn't a big fan of, just an example of, because they sort of made the Great Khans act like generic bandits, which they can be. There's a few places in the original game where they are generic bandits, but they're specifically like they're a proud tribe of post-apocalyptic wastelanders. And they didn't really, basically, from the one scene we see, the only thing I can surmise from the game is that they sort of just regressed. And that was a little disappointing to see. And there's a few more moments like this. There's actually, because the series is taking place from the perspective of multiple factions. You've got Lucy and the Ghoul, who are currently making their way through New Vegas. You've got her brother, who's stuck in the vault back in California. But then the Brotherhood of Steel is also making contact with the Commonwealth, these are the main character. That's the region from the fourth game. And they're making references to that I'm like, oh, this must mean, this faction actually did something. Like they're making things from Fallout 4 canon too. So it's kind of all over the place, but in a way that makes me hopeful, because that's the kind of storytelling I like. They don't have to canonize everything, but I like them putting their own personal twist on certain things. And I like that they reference that these events did happen. And you can clearly see, even just the 3 episodes that were out when I watched, they're putting some care into it.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how it develops out. What I do like about the series, though, is that since we do have the Ghoul and I think this is so smart how they had like the Ghoul be somebody that existed before the bombs dropped. You get to see characters like Robert House exist before he was like obviously turned into a computer or whatever, and you could see, and they give like Robert House kind of more characterization. So I'm really curious to see how that like kind of pans out in the overall season. I guess kind of shifting gears a bit here. So as I mentioned earlier, you are a huge manga guy, right? And I think it was recently it was announced that there was this other huge like manga / like anime YouTuber. I wish I could remember his name. Like I can recognize his face all the time, but he's like the host of like the Trash Talk podcast or whatever. And he announced that recently he was getting into producing his own animated series. And it was met with some kind of criticism at the fact that it is another one of your favorite anime types, an isekai.
Right. So yeah, you're referring to I believe it's Giguk, although I think it's supposed to be pronounced Gig-UK. And he made he's also a big isekai enjoyer. And yeah, it's an isekai set with, I believe, in his homeland, Thailand, or the main character is Thai.
Yeah, and a lot of people are kind of, I don't know if I should say rightfully, because I kind of agree with the whole idea that, okay, if you have the resources to like build out your own anime series and you go for like the thing that everyone else is going for, which is like an isekai, I could kind of understand some of the frustration with that. But I guess I'm kind of curious. Like, let's say you were thrown in a similar situation. Like, you had a ton of money to like just throw at the wall or something, and you were like, you know what? I wanna create like a manga or anime series. Is there any ideas that you would want to explore that you feel like hasn't been explored yet? That you think, like if you had like the resources for it, you could really like nail down.
Actually, so on that subject, and I want to say for the anime produced by Giguk, they say it's an anime, but like it's still, I believe it's actually like a 30-minute film, so not as expansive. So I can sort of get why like it sounds more grandiose than it is. But if I had the money to produce an actual like anime series and it could be whatever subject, I've definitely thought about this. I feel like I feel like anybody who does any sort of medium, like, reviewing movies or, reviewing books, will always think I have an idea for what I want to do. And I've had this idea for a few concepts um, that I think would be fun in manga form. Um, in particular, like, while I am a huge fan of isekais, and I feel like I haven't watched or read an isekai that does a good job of actually utilizing the setting, as it were. Although there's some debate if it's but basically the concept. That wouldn't be like I had an idea for something which I thought would be kind of cool, because my other love is like martial arts manga, and I did a review of this one martial arts manga. It's like it was almost perfect, except they had this really weird stuff which had nothing to do with martial arts. So check that out if anybody who's listening, go ahead and check that if you want to know what I'm talking about. I won't bring it up here because it's disturbing stuff. But I did like the idea of the concept of what I'd probably do is a story about a guy who's like a martial artist. But have you heard of this game called The Altars?
Um, I have heard about it, but I have not had a chance to play it.
So yeah, I haven't played it too. I just heard the concept, and I really like the concept. So I say like it hasn't been done before, but I am basically directly ripping this from. But the idea is the altars. You're a dude who's stranded, I believe, in space, and you have a machine, like a sort of a time machine or a multiverse machine that you can use to call upon various versions of yourself that took different paths in life, so you can solve problems. So, for example, there's a food shortage, but you don't know anything about gardening. You can look through your past memories, and you can. It's like that time when you were choosing your college major. You could change it from geology to botany, and then know more about growing various plants in this kind of environment. And I thought that would be really interesting, as this is a story where it's basically like a martial arts tournament, but with one guy, multiple versions of himself, all who learn different martial arts, and they're sort of like beating the shit out of each other to see what is the strongest version of himself. And I haven't really put too much thought into like making this a reality. It's just, it directly lines up with like I haven't seen a good martial arts manga that doesn't get too crazy. The plot itself is kind of ridiculous, but like all the actual characters would still be like regular martial artists. It's just one guy with different training, but it's not like he's got superpowers. But that's probably the direction I'd go if someone told me like come up with a concept to make any anime you want. Just because I feel like one, that would save a hell of a lot on voice acting, and two, yeah, it's probably the most unique premise I could think of right off the top of my head.
That's very fair. That's very fair. And you're right. Like, as anybody that like engages with, media, especially extensively, like reviewing and stuff, you do come up with your own ideas. I actually have a few ideas of my own that I'll spitball here, because why not? I don't think I'll ever make like a solo episode doing it, but And I guess you would be the one to ask because you do have kind of this familiarity, especially with isekais, like a genre that I'm very kind of hit and miss about myself. Like I'm also very exhausted with its oversaturation. But I always wonder if like you take like if anyone's ever kind of, and this is more like kind of a stylistic premise more so than like a specific story I've had in mind. And keep in mind, I'm not a writer. You know, ideas can sound good on paper, but obviously, depending on how you translate it, it can go in a number of different ways. But I always wondered if they've ever done an isekai, but stylistically they represent the character being isekai like in live action. So think like something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where it's like the series starts and it's like live action footage of just a guy living his normal life. He gets isekai, but he still looks like his live action self, and like the world around him is like very anime esque. And you could do like the whole like meta humor joke about like, you know, anime drawing styles and stuff like that. I always thought that would be a fun idea, but I imagine like nobody would ever want to, you know, expend the money for that. Unless if I'm wrong, has there ever been a series like that that you know of?
So I can't think of off the top of my head. I actually don't think that would be too much more expensive than, because live action segments are always going to be like, theoretically, the series you're talking about, I could make right now at very little cost by adding in, like, it'd be very easy to superimpose a live action actor. The only difficulties would be like having to arrange the art to go around the character as opposed to cutting off the real life model. But it certainly sounds like it could be done pretty easily, and it could be pretty funny. The closest thing, honestly, yeah, no, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, like a sort of a Space Jam equivalent of that, but for anime. Although it does, I wouldn't be shocked if it existed, because there are a lot of things that just haven't gotten translated in Japan, or even like China or Korea. They have their own, where I could just see something like that being right in line with classic, specifically classic Japanese comedy, like from some of the other game shows and things. I could see that existing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm always just kind of a fan of like, you know, these conflicting styles, because another idea I have is kind of in a similar route where it's like, you know, it's, I don't know, I frame this in the context of like a crime show or crime anime or anything, but like the outside element is represented through like so everything is presented like, you know, in the usual Japanese animation style, but like the outside criminal element, or yeah, I would say criminal element because I was thinking Fargo when I was coming up with this idea, is represented by like a more Western style. So like if you have like an American in the show, he's represented with like a very different style that, like, you know, obviously contrasts with like the overall show being, you know, anime inspired, but like, you know, still kind of gels together.
Yeah. There's actually, I don't know if I might have even talked about this, but like, so there was a show last year. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was it was To Be Hero X. Have you heard of this one?
No, I have not.
So it's not exactly what you're talking about, but I think it's kind of interesting. So To Be Hero X has the distinction. It's a Chinese anime. It's gorgeously animated, but it has three distinct styles that it swaps between. The first being standard 2D animation, the second being 3D animation, and the third being a sort of like mix of the two with more of a focus on like an almost more like childlike 2D drawing where all the characters look way more cartoonish. And it's actually present in the plot of the show because one of the main characters, there's 10 heroes that you follow the perspective, and one of the heroes has reality warping powers. So he snaps his fingers and the art style changes. And that's actually a plot point. You'll hear like the art style will change for a certain character. You might hear the snap. So even though you don't see this character and you don't know the power set at this point, whatever that character is doing has changed the reality of the show. and that's a really cool use of it. That's the most recent example I can think of where the actual art style is a sort of a meta plot focus.
Yeah, I mean, I can always imagine that like a lot of studios don't want to pursue something like that because incorporating like several different styles is,
Yeah,
way more taxing than, what they normally do now.
yeah,
Although, I mean, is it though? Because like I know from my understanding, like at least like with a lot of animated shows, that you have like different segments done by different studios, and like, but for the most part it's all following like a similar style guide. Like if they want to do like an action sequence, they'll bring on this guy, but for the most part for like talking sequences they stick with like this studio. So I can't imagine it could be
yeah.
that impossible, but I get that it would have to be like a lot more coordination.
Yeah, that's the main thing is if you can get it coordinated, then it'll naturally become easier as you get used to it. But because it's such a like generally if you do this kind of thing, it's usually for one project. So there's not a lot of experience with having a full team like ready to do any animation style at the drop of the hat. But when it is done, it's very nice. The few times I've seen it done.
um Going back, so you said that the main game, or at least one of the main games that you played, was Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which unfortunately got, I think from my understanding, got like hosed in most of the award shows because obviously it was competing against like Silk Song and Expedition 33, which is how I'll segue into this next question. I'm surprised that you haven't played Expedition 33 yet.
I absolutely have played
Oh, you
Expedition
have.
33. It's just it. So I get some of the hype, but it didn't draw me in. Like it wasn't a very memorable experience for me outside of the initial first act, and then it sort of, in my opinion, dragged on a little too long. Not to say it doesn't. I think it does deserve a lot of these awards it won because um, going on to so Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I actually don't think it got shafted in the sense that it wasn't deserved. The only place I feel like it definitely got shafted was the RPG of the year because as someone who played both, Kingdom Come is way more customizable an experience, which I think is to me the core part of what makes an RPG an RPG. But overall, like as much as I love the game, it's not a game for everybody. It's got a lot of very specific design choices that can definitely put people off, and it's like I remember the first hour I was carrying sacks, and then that's immersive. I feel like if I was a peasant in that year of Bohemia, I'd be carrying a lot of sacks too, but that's not what the average gamer is looking for. While something like Claire Obscura, you can just sort of jump right in and engage with the story and the combat, and it's just a good, straightforward, fun time for all.
I'm carrying a lot of sacks now, if you catch my drift. Ho ho ho. Anyways.
Oh,
um yeah, so yeah, that is yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to play, Expedition 33. In general, like, I like RPGs, but I just never really have a lot of time for them. I think the only
yeah.
main, like, new release game I played was Dispatch, which I'm not sure if you played. I don't know if you're really into,
I
like,
did play
Telltale likes.
Dispatch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that style. So what do you think of Dispatch?
Well, I did an episode on it. I don't know if you had a chance to like watch it, but no, overall I enjoyed it. Most of my criticisms are usually kind of very, they're either very minor or they're more so fixated on what I wanted the story to be versus what it eventually was. And I feel like
Yeah.
I shouldn't fault the story for that. Um, but no, overall I still do enjoy it. I still do think it is like one of the best Telltale likes. Not the best for me. I still like, for
Yeah.
me, top tier is still Wolf Among Us. Um,
Right.
But I
Fantastic.
hope at the very least it does revive like an interest in Telltale likes. Although I don't know if we'll see anything from Telltale themselves doing it. But at the very least, maybe hopefully something from Ad Hoc themselves, whether it's the Dispatch season 2, which I'm kind of mixed on if I want to see with more time being reflected. I think in general I just want to see more from Ad Hoc, but I don't know if I want a season 2 of Dispatch.
I could see that. For me, one of the biggest things I liked about Dispatch was I actually so the story mode was cool. Like I liked the actual characters to a degree. I feel like some got basically it felt in Telltale style less. It felt more linear. I know most Telltale games are linear, but like it felt more linear during the non-gameplay segments, just because I feel like I didn't really have a chance to focus on certain characters I would have liked to focus on, as opposed to like just the two main women and then the two celebrity guest appearances, which were fairly well done. But I really enjoyed the actual mini game. I'd like a version of that without the story. Well, like with the story, but like I want to be playing that by itself, kind of like how. Actually, I guess I don't have an example, but yeah, that was my favorite part was actually dispatching the heroes and getting the various outcomes.
Yeah, I know some people have been talking about like they want that kind of expanded into potentially its own mode. Like some people are saying like a roguelike mode, but with just the gameplay of like constantly dispatching and stuff like that. It's pulled from like it's this game I see all the time on Steam, like Dispatch 911, where you basically playing a 911 dispatcher. But obviously that's like more of kind of a sim game as opposed to like kind of the gaminess that you see in Dispatch. But yeah, no, I mean overall, I think it's like very, very good. Overall, great experience. The highlight for me, obviously, being a lot of like the voice acting. I said all this in my Dispatch episode, which you all should watch. But so I guess kind of so I mean I don't know how much my content that you've necessarily seen in this past year or so, but I was kind of like asking this question for you in particular, but are there any takes that you want to challenge me on? I know I didn't do a lot of solo episodes though, but maybe like any off comments or just, what, we've known each other for years. Any takes I've thrown out in the years that you want to just, you want to debate me on, go toe to toe with. I could take it.
I actually think I agree with you on a lot of your takes. Besides, I think the only times I disagree with you was when it was for comedy's sake, because it'd be funny to disagree with you. I will point out, like, I firmly agree with your popcorn take. That movie theater popcorn is a fucking scam.
I knew you did.
Yeah, I absolutely do. It's fucking overpriced. It's all movie theater stuff is overpriced, but popcorn they try to sell you as part of the experience. They're like, no, this is better because you can just get, and it's like it's just fucking butter and fat. It's like it's a scam. So great take on that point. But yeah, other than that, I think me and you agree on most things.
I feel like this is always like a funny thing I run in my head, but I feel like the only reason why popcorn is so big in movie theaters is because like years ago, somebody's like great like grandfather or something was like, man, I have all this extra corn and I'm gonna lose the farm if I don't sell it. I gotta sell it to somebody. Oh, I know Jim down at the theater. I could just hawk it to him, and one thing led to another. That's the only reason why. We eat popcorn to this day.
I have a similar theory about fortune cookies in Chinese food places. Some guy just made like some unflavored cookies and was like, shit, what am I going to do with these? And they saw like a Chinese food place was like, yeah, we need some stuff to give away. So
well, how's that explain like the origin of like the actual fortunes written inside? It was just like
some guy wrote like a phone number with a he was trying to pick up a chick, so he's like, hey, I'd love to see you later, and accidentally got into one of the cookies and explained it away. It's like, oh, that's your fortune. That's your lucky numbers down there.
Oh, just trying to cover for himself.
It's like, oh shit. That's how tradition is always born.
It explains why it's not like enough numbers for a phone number because it's like an old school thing.
Yeah, like it just got smudged or something. They're like, ah, man.
So I guess. So you said I don't know if I can necessarily say that because your content's always been kind of like scripted, right? As opposed to what I do, it's just like ramble in front of a mic for 30 minutes or so. Your stuff has mostly been like kind of very scripted in nature, and you said that you were getting more, you potentially want to focus more on like video essay stuff. So I guess what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for you in trying to, I guess, approach like this longer for like not necessarily just reviewing something, but actually doing a deeper dive into like, let's say, a subject?
It's interesting you say that because I've been editing my footage for my latest video, and I actually kind of just rambled for a bit. And there's always been, I've script my content in the sense that what I'll do is I'll have a rambling thought in my head, and then I'll just cut out all the repeated stuff and just, like, a lot of this is my natural response that I just sort of pretty up for the camera so as to not to waste anyone's time. And I kind of just ranted in front of the camera talking about this book because as a mystery, I feel like those are a bit harder to review while also still being interesting because the main thing is the quality of the mystery, and you don't want to give away any details that would like spoil what the answer is. And so I was looking at my timeline, and normally I get about 13 to 14 minutes of content that I edit down to around 8 to 10 minutes, and usually it's pretty good. But I somehow, and I don't even remember what I did, is I apparently I talked for 30 minutes straight about this book, and I'm editing it, and I remember like I'm 10 minutes in, and I'm like, wait a minute, what did I talk about? I feel like I've covered everything in these 10 minutes. So the biggest thing is definitely going to be like organizing my thoughts for some of these longer videos, because I don't want to be one of those video essay guys who makes like 2 or 3 hour long videos. As cool as that potentially is, that sounds like hell. I think the max is just like a 30-minute video, which already sounds pretty much like it's going to be a lot of work. But the main thing I'm going to do, and this is also part of the reason I took such a long hiatus between certain videos, is I've been slowly getting used to the software that I'm editing on, DaVinci Resolve, because I have most of the basics down, but obviously to better improve my workflow, it's better to know the product in and out, know what shortcuts I should be using, know what does what, even if I don't necessarily use it. So the biggest thing is definitely going to be like actually buckling down and going through the detailed bits of the software.
Yeah, I've been liking DaVinci Resolve myself, although admittedly I don't use a lot of its main functions because most of it is just like the audio editing side of things. Outside of like occasional cuts I have to do. Very powerful software. I feel like it's too powerful for what I need because it's like, for context, it's used in like, big movie productions. Like I think like Thor, Love and Thunder was made using DaVinci Resolve or something.
The movie I was in with Leonardo DiCaprio, they were actually using Resolve to edit that one. So
were you actually in it, or I swear that was just a bit that you were just playing on the server?
Yeah.
Oh damn! Congrats! I'm gonna watch that movie soon, so I hope I can see you in the background.
Okay, if you can't, I'm sure you've already seen it, but I have a screenshot of exactly where you can see me. My face is a little shadowed, but yeah, I'm doing good work.
Oh man, there's never enough time for these interviews with you, Dennis. But I guess kind of one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because, like you said, you're a huge RPG fan, and a part of that is also like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop role playing, what have you. We've played a few times ourselves, on and off throughout the years. But I think recently, Critical Role did an adaptation of one of their campaigns, the Mighty Nine, and even before that, they did Vox Machina. They did,
Yeah.
producing work for Dispatch. But I was kind of curious about like the nature of translating like a campaign into like a streaming, like a show in general, right? Where when you're doing the campaign, a lot of it is like very improvisational. The story, you have like kind of a rough guide for the story, but different actions of different characters can affect different things. And then like translating that into a show, you have the full context of how everything plays out, so you could play around with anticipation and things like that. um for yourself, what do you think is, I guess, the biggest? Are there any big issues that you see with that whole translation process of taking like a campaign that people like play out in a setting and then translating that into a show?
See, this is interesting because I've actually personally I can't stand. I haven't tried the Mighty Nine or the Mighty Number Nine or the Mighty whatever it was you said about the new Critical Role show. I haven't tried yet, but I couldn't stand certain parts of Vox Machina because despite like Critical Role, nothing against them. They, good campaign. I appreciate what they've done, even if I don't necessarily appreciate their impact on the greater culture of D&D. Just because, yeah, for me, I've always been one who like it's a game. When I'm playing D&D, and I'm not, I'll try, to tell a story is great, but that's not the main goal. The main goal is for everyone to play a game and have fun together. And this doesn't always result in coherent stories, things that translate well to the screen. And I think there's a particular scene in Vox Machina which I won't go too deep into the context. I just know like one of the main characters was presumably having a personal quest. Like they were in a fight with another character, and in a show, this is probably the point where you'd be like in a properly written story where you'd have like a decent, satisfying conclusion with how the fight went. Maybe they win, maybe they lose, but in the show, in this sense, like I remember the character gets their ass beat, and then they call for the rest of the party, and it's supposed to be like this epic moment, but like it kind of falls flat because to me, I know like this is just like this is originally some sort of scene that didn't have this level of impact, and it was just the nature of party-based tabletop role-playing games requiring the rest of the party to be there to actually win the fight, as opposed to an actually like earned, deserved story moment. And I feel like that's my problem with a lot of these. One moment, we have this drink of water. That's my problem with a lot of these like D&D podcasts and attempts to turn these like personal stories into a show is it doesn't feel like it doesn't mix well. Like, yeah, I guess the translation in this case for me personally is always very bad. They obviously have to pretty up some of the details. They take what's happened and they try to storify it as much as possible, storyfy it. But I've just never seen it done well. Sort of like adapting a video game or an anime or something into a completely different medium usually doesn't end well.
Wow, that's really interesting. I never took you like I always, because there's always this kind of dichotomy that exists with like tabletop RPG players where you have people that are like really invested in like the character building and stuff like that, and more so like the gameplay is there to kind of like facilitate that character building or like that story building and whatever. And then you have people that are more interested in like the mechanics of D&D, and like the storytelling for them is kind of more secondary. They're more interested in like the gameplay loop of like exploring a dungeon, getting better loot, coming back to town, resting up or whatever, and then going into a dungeon again. And I always saw you as like kind of like more like the storytelling side of that.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's funny. I like obviously as a person, I'd like to think I'm a bit of a theatrical person, so I like YouTube so much. It allows me to like sort of put together these thoughts I'll be having about something I'm engaging with and just, you know, put it on the screen. But like in regards to D&D, I actually started playing much earlier than like the what I want to say there was a big D&D boom in the late 2010s and of course 2020 with the pandemic. It was an amazing time for D&D, but I began playing in like 2005. My father's an old school nerd, and so I started with 3.5, the which is an edition that is very number crunchy. It has stats for almost everything. You have a use rope skill, which that's not in fifth edition. Your character automatically knows how to use rope in fifth edition, and because of that, I fell more in love with the mechanical aspects, just the idea that, and that's why I love RPGs to an extent too. Is like I like that everything interacts with like the game interacts with the world, and I like telling the story through that. But with modern D&D, especially, and this is what I kind of meant by like critical role culture and why I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the impact on the general idea, is a lot of people are more focused on like the improv or the, like basically putting mechanics secondary. And like I said, because of my roots in 3.5 and the fact that I absolutely loved all the number crunching and it actually helped me with my math for a while, to see this. Sorry about that. Ooh.
No, you're good.
To see this general shift in attitude that like, oh, the rules are they're guidelines. It's like, well, they say that, but it's still rules. Like you need, if I'm down for improv. If people want to improv, come over to my place. I'll set up improv games. We'll have some improv. But if I'm playing D&D, I want to play D&D. I want to interact with the rules of the medium because that's what I'm paying for. That's why I bought the books. That's why I learned the rules, was so I'd use the rules. I don't mind like changing them if everyone agrees, this is how you change them. But yeah, I personally just prefer engaging with the game as a game. And then if something fun happens because of that, that's great. But like to me, that means the priority is never telling the story in a satisfying way, I guess is a better way to like. I don't want to follow the story beats of a normal story if that's not how the game is naturally flowing. If it happens that way, that's great. But if not, I don't want to. There are a lot of people I've played with before we should do this because it sounds more heroic, as opposed to being like, well, we should do this because that's where it's naturally leading to, and we find this guy or we find this item because it's in our path. So that's where I am with that.
Yeah, because I know like the biggest split, or at least I think the biggest split I see in terms of those two types of players is like dealing with character death. Like obviously the rules of D&D dictate that your character can die if they're put in like a dire enough situation, but obviously if you spend a lot of time creating a character and driving this like narrative with them, just have them die because they rolled snake eyes on, let's say, crossing a bridge or something, that's like, okay, well, roll again, I guess. Nerd.
Yeah. Personally, I love that. I love the idea that my character just fucking, because I mean, one thing too is at the end of the day, you can always just do the classic. Okay, well, this is Jeff died crossing the bridge. Well, this is his twin brother Jeff the Second or some bullshit, and you got the same character, and it might feel a bit cheap, but like that's my point. Is I'd rather my character, like some people do, and I can sympathize. They get really attached to their character, in this example where they're like, I spent 4 hours building this character, coming up with their backstory, and then they just die. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's part of the fun of it, right? At least for me. And I get like, oh, that might be devastating to some people, but it's like, well, that just means you make a new character, or you just use the same. Like, there's so many ways around it, but I love classic D&D.
Well, we are approaching the end of the episode. I guess I want to kind of end on this one topic because I think we're, I feel like this is, again, another topic that I don't feel like would really come up organically in my own, what I do here on Podcast Pasta. But I feel like we're both very similar in the sense that we don't have, as somebody that talks with a lot of content creators and stuff like that, we both don't really utilize the, like, I don't know what you call it, like I call it like the TikTok cadence, like that very kind of weird rhythmic way some content creators present like their work. Like, today, audience, we're gonna, I don't know, I can't do it. But and it's more okay for me, I imagine, because I'm like a podcaster, it's supposed to be like a more natural speaking voice with me. But do you ever feel like that kind of limits like your potential reach in the fact that, at least from what I could tell, you don't really, for your own work, you don't really try to do anything weirdly gimmicky like that with like your presentation style?
Yeah, no. I mean, the closest I've come is I've definitely, like, I've spoken up and I've tried to talk a little faster just because I've been told by some people that I have a slower cadence when discussing certain topics, when I'm trying to enunciate and speak clearly. But I've seen some creators do that. They'll put on a little voice, or they'll talk in a specific tone that's like really, it sounds unnatural, and I guess the kids love it. Or I personally, I can't put that, like, I'm already trying to improve the effort I put into the actual work.
Personally, it drives me nuts. I only tolerate in certain forms of content, but even then it's always like a negative for me, because like once you like notice it and everything, it just becomes like grating, Yeah,
like I've actually got two examples, like going back to Fallout real quick, because there's some content creators that I listen to that they both do this, and it infuriates me, like you said, and it's hard because I don't blame them. If it's getting them more views, they're doing better than me. I'm not going to say, like, stop doing it for my sake. Like, obviously, as they say, you got to chase the bag if that's what you're doing it for. But, like, one in particular, there's a man who does Fallout lore videos who I haven't checked out in a while. And his name is Oxhorn. I don't know if you've ever followed any Fallout lore videos and you've met this or you've seen this guy.
Probably not consciously. Like, if I accidentally, I might have. But, I've never, like watched Fallout lore video and then like, oh, I want to check out more of this guy's content. Usually it's just like I'm looking up a random detail about Fallout and I find the video.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I found him. And I basically, he's just started doing this so much. That's when I noticed, like, is this the guy? But yeah, he talked like, and there he was. He was in the vault and he was crazy. And it's just like it grates on your head, and it's like, okay, I get it. You're trying to like put an intriguing tone, like, are you guys as interested in this as I am?
I just jammed my toe. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I ate a bagel as I recorded the dialogue. And it's like I said, I get why they're doing it. It's clearly working for them, but that's a personal, like, I can't watch that. Even though I like Fallout lore, I can't watch this guy because he does that. And so I get where you're coming from. Like, I don't know because I know there's like a term I've seen thrown around called vocal fry, which I think is more like for certain subsets of like women content creators, although that's how I've seen it used, but I think it can be anyone. I don't know if that's what it is, where it's like you're like purposely adding like what I think is supposed to be like a microphone voice to your, like, it's like, well, like that's another example. Like, I don't know what you'd call what the Oxhorn is doing, or as you say, like the TikTok voice, but like, it's definitely, I'm not a fan, and I probably wouldn't do it even if a genie who was like all knowing was like, you do that, double subscribers, $1,000 a month. I don't think I could do that. Like,
well, wait a minute. Now hold on here. I could use $1,000 a month.
No, I mean, okay, yeah, I suppose so, but like, I couldn't do it naturally. Like I'd fuck it up just because I'd be so.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I wouldn't try.
I would hate it stylistically, but like if I guaranteed results, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think
I'm not in the right position to be
it.
asked that question to consider that as a thing, you know.
Yeah, I'd say I think I'd do it, but I wouldn't tell people what I did. So like, I meet them and I'll be like, yeah, I make money doing something, and they'll be like, what? And it's like, I don't know, just I dig moats around castles, something that they
I do
don't want to verify.
OnlyFans,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do OnlyFans, but with my normal voice.
You specify to them with my normal voice. Well, Dennis, this has been an absolute blast, but we have approached the end of the episode. If you want to go ahead and shout out where people can find you, where people can find your work, go ahead.
Okay, I have a channel on YouTube. It's called Deniz the Men Is. Look forward to new content being posted on a semi-regular basis.
All right, and thank you all so much for joining us so far. I don't actually have an end bit here. Dennis, you got anything?
I can do my Obama impression for you.
Sure, go for it.
All fellow Americans, my daughter Malia has tragically passed away.
Well, that's just sad.
I know.
Take care, everyone.